Namaskaram. Dr. Suresh, can you hear me?
Yeah. Good evening.
Good evening. So you're all set?
Yeah.
Excellent. So Namaskaram. Today is Uttradam for us. Uttradam is the is the ninth day of Onam. By some quirk of the calculation between, the Malayalam calendar and, the way it transitions. Today, this year, Onam, the entire festival is only 9 days. Typically, it's 10 days. So today is the 8th day, or traditionally it's the 9th day. So happy Uttradam. Tomorrow is the Tiruvonam, the sort of the final day of Onam, or at least the most important day of Onam. So to everybody who's logged in, happy Uttradam, namaskaram again. Welcome to the 4th edition of Conservation Conversations, a series of live sessions conducted by the Intach chapters in Kerala. A few housekeeping slides in case you missed it at the beginning. Request everyone to please remain unmuted, both video and audio, through the session. This is to ensure that we don't have a very cluttered screen and we can focus on Dr. Suresh's talk. Also, you would, I'm sure as Dr. Suresh talks, there would be many things that you would want to ask questions about. Normally, we take a break for questions towards the end of the session, but because a lot of people have been urging us to have more opportunities to ask questions, we're thinking we'll take a pause midway. That is, after maybe 3 or 4 questions, we'll pause and we'll probably sort of take some questions at that stage, and then continue with the session, which will also sort of break the monotony of just two people talking. So I think that's sort of the housekeeping part of the session. Now, the other thing that I'd like to say, which again is something that we always say in these sessions, by the very nature of these sessions, there'll be some of you who are experts who understand the topic being talked about in very great detail, but also there'll be a lot of people who are sort of beginners who have an interest, who have an intelligent interest. I fall in that category myself. So both categories, I feel there'll be some content that will seem very basic for the experts, and there might be some things which the non-expert might feel is a little too dense for his level, too heavy for his level. A certain amount of satisfaction and a certain amount of dissatisfaction is part of the deal for these sessions. What we try to do with these sessions is to just open certain doors. They are not conclusive sort of conversations on the topic. Our experts are very generous with their time. And once these doors are opened and some interest is kindled, you can, of course, open the door further by reaching out to the experts or to other sources and so on and so forth. So that is the other sort of preface that I want to set. Now, coming to Suresh, Dr. Suresh has his bio, if read in full, I think will take the entire session in itself. So I will not sort of go through his brilliant academic career in which he's done many wonderful things, and he has a professional career that followed it. And he's part of the Intach family. That's the other thing that I'm very thrilled about. He's our state convener for Tamil Nadu. And Dr. Suresh has been part of Intach more or less from the point Intach was founded. As I think you signed up as a student, is that right, Dr. Suresh?
Yeah, as a student volunteer.
As a student volunteer. So, and he's been part of the Intach journey through all its ups and some of its downs and further ups. So he's been through it all. So it's my privilege to sort of welcome my senior Intach colleague, Dr. Suresh, to the session. But very briefly, Dr. Suresh holds a master's degree in archaeology from the University of Madras. He has 2 PhDs. For most of us, securing one is the work of a lifetime. He has 2 of them. His first PhD is in classical archaeology from the Jawaharlal Nehru University. And his second PhD is in medieval Indian art from the University of Mysore. Dr. Suresh will talk a little bit more about his sort of profile in a minute. But for me, the most interesting part about his profile is the way he introduces himself as the only freelance archaeologist in India, which is a wonderful description to have. Because he chooses to do so many wonderful things, I feel it would be a disservice for him to be sort of locked down in, say, a state archaeology department or the Archaeological Survey of India. He does such a wide range of projects. So that's the standout feature. When I met him the first time, the part of his bio that stuck in my head was this description, that I'm a freelance archaeologist. So warm welcome again, Dr. Suresh, to Conservation Conversations. Thank you so much for doing this with us. Without further ado, I think we'll jump into the first question. You have all of these wide-ranging interests and professional experience in topics connected with antiquity and, in a broad sense, the preservation of cultural heritage. Could you give a sort of brief overview of your journey and maybe some of its main landmarks?
Thank you. And thank you for the generous introduction. Now, you introduced me so generously and aptly as the only freelance archaeologist in India. And I'd just like to explain how that came about and how it's relevant to the coming today's session also. As a child, I was exposed to monuments and museums because I was the only child. My parents, my father was a senior official in the government in Delhi. So before the age of 10, I had seen most of the major, what would be today's World Heritage monuments of India. And that was what kindled in me that I'll take up a career related to heritage. And when the time came, there was no objection from anyone. And I did what I wanted, qualified myself. And what was expected was I would go into government service or teaching. That's what all archaeologists do, at least in India and in most other places all over the globe. But then more out of chance than choice, that was not to be. But then if someone says, a freelance architect, a freelance lawyer, a freelance chartered accountant, doctor or engineer, you know what he or she is doing. But people are surprised when I say I'm a freelance archaeologist. But then this gave me an opportunity to do what I wanted to do, to pursue my passion without being bowed down or having to follow certain official regulations or having to do things which we have to do when one is in a 10 to 5 or a 9 to 6 job. And it all started, I started doing research, helping others do research, editing, proofreading, writing books on archaeology. And slowly I was told to build up a career. I knew if I write technical books, it's not going to fetch any money. And as a freelancer, I have to diversify. And I was told children is a good market. In other countries, we have very good books on archaeology for children and non-specialists, not so in India. So I started writing for children. What you see on the slide are some of my books, including children's books. The Oxford University Press came forward and they asked me to write textbooks for the Tamil Nadu Matriculation Board and later for the CBSE, NCERT on history, civics, and social sciences. Okay. Then tourist guidebooks. Totally, I've authored around 45 books.
Oh my. Do you continue to have this relation with the government education departments?
I do. That is, it's as a freelancer, sometimes I work with them closely. Sometimes when I'm away from India, I don't do. So it's by time I am in touch with them.
Right.
And trying to put in something of heritage into the curriculum.
Okay.
official curriculum.
Okay.
Then from books, it slowly, I was doing all other activities, doing lectures, workshops. And then as a PhD student, during my first PhD at Jawaharlal Nehru University of Delhi, JNU in short, where I was blessed with some of the best professors in ancient Indian history and archaeology. You may have, many of you would be familiar at least with the names Romila Thapar, R. Champakalakshmi, and B.D. Chattopadhyay. I had the best of ancient India. And my thesis came out before it became a book. I thought, because as a PhD student, I went to London to learn Latin and as an Intach scholar, and I was in the British Museum, and they do tours all over the world, including South India. And I was inspired by that. I did help them with the South India bit with some academic inputs, even as a student. And I thought, why not take small groups of people, interested, like-minded people, serious tourists, if I can use that word, to these remote archaeological sites and tell them a story based on the British Museum tours model. That's how that slide that you just saw, I think it's coming up now. It's my Roman trail tour. I started doing tours based on different themes, like what they do in the West, a Chora tour, a Tanjavur Maratha tour. Each tour is based on a particular dynasty or period of Indian history with everything. We just don't see something because we are in Tanjavur or Madurai. We only see things which are connected with the theme of the tour, to the extent even the cultural performances and shopping experience and even the cuisine, at least for one day of the tour, is connected with the theme of the tour. For a Chora tour, we have a Chora dinner. For a Roman trail tour, a Roman dinner, and so on. This is the slide that is just coming up in front of you, is the Roman trail tour, which starts from near Muziris, though the exact location of Muziris is still a matter of academic debate. It starts on the Arabian Sea, Kottapuram, in the Muziris area, and we take the same route which the ancient Roman traders, when they came to India, took to come from the Arabian Sea, Malabar coast, Kerala, to Tamil Nadu and Andhra, the Bay of Bengal. So from Kottapuram, Muziris, we come to Tiruchur, to Palakkad Pass, and then to Coimbatore, Vijayamangalam, Vellalur, Kodumanal, Karur, Kaveri Patnam. We are right on the Bay of Bengal. We travel northwards to Arikamedu, the biggest Roman trade site in South Asia, and the tour ends in the Santom Church in Chennai, because we believe Apostle Saint Thomas, who was interned there, came in one of the Roman ships to India. So this tour catapulted me into the tourism world. Tour companies started contacting me, and it was well publicized with catchy words like "see Rome in your backyard" or "enjoy Europe without paying in euros," and so on. And then,
how many days is the tour?
Pardon?
What is the duration of this tour?
This Roman trail is the longest and the most complicated tour of mine. The other tours, the Chora or Tanjavur Maratha, are small, 2 or 3 days, and within Tamil Nadu. The Roman trail is starts in Kerala, ends via Pondicherry to Tamil Nadu. It usually starts on a Tuesday night from Chennai. That's because I live in Chennai, but many from Bombay, Delhi, and other distant places have joined the tour at Thrissur on Wednesday morning. So literally the tour starts on a Wednesday morning and ends on Sunday evening at the Santom Church in Chennai. Late evening. After that, they are free to go back to their destinations. And it has always to be a Wednesday morning to a Sunday evening, because in the tour we see 8 museums spread across 3 states, and each of the museum is closed on a different day of the week. So if we do it in any other day combination, we will lose out on one of the museums having Roman stuff. Now the tours did very well. And then I was continuing with my publications. Then tour companies wanted me to write tourist guidebooks and brochures, which I did. And I also did for the government tourism department. Then if there was anything, one more thing came on the way. It was an assignment to go to Cambodia to study the South Indian influences in Cambodia with special reference to Angkor Wat. Okay. I'm mentioning that here because it has a lot of relevance to Kerala murals, about which we are going to talk in detail. So that was a very great opportunity, unexpected. Many senior scholars wanted to do it, but the assignment fell on my lap.
And was this when the ASI was commissioned to do, there was a very long restoration project at Angkor that the ASI was commissioned to do. Was it during that time?
Yeah, it was. ASI, I think, is still doing. ASI has been doing, connected, the Cambodian government has been inviting the governments of different countries to help restore the monuments of Cambodia. And all governments from different countries, US, Germany, many other countries, including India, have responded because it's a World Heritage and the Cambodian government cannot do it alone. And right in Angkor Wat, and mostly the team that goes from the Archaeological Survey of India, they have members from South India because Angkor Wat itself was a Vishnu temple. Today it's a Buddhist shrine, but not in worship. But originally it was a Vishnu temple built on the Dravidian style of architecture. And we do believe architects and masons from South India went there and helped in the construction. So it is in the fitness of things that India and Indian archaeologists participate in the restoration process. So this project of mine was not connected with the ASI, but since I'm so close to the ASI, senior officials in ASI put me in touch with the ASI team in Cambodia. They helped me throughout, including inviting me for dinner and tea along with them during weekends and other processes, getting me permission, because now I'm just coming to that. At the moment, when I went there, they had already done the Angkor Wat restoration. They were doing another monument, a Buddhist monument, Thap Pro, in the neighborhood near Angkor Wat. And Angkor Wat is a big monument with a lot of Indian art in it, including South Indian. And my assignment was to document the South Indian art there. But for the last many years, one part of Angkor Wat is now out of bounds for tourists and visitors. It's like the Qutub Minar or even the hilltop above the Badami Cave Hills. Because it's at a height, it's risky. If you allow one, you have to allow everyone. And crowds keep coming. So it's difficult. Crowd management is a challenge. And plus, in all these places, the bigger challenge is it has become a suicide point.
People go to kill themselves.
Climb up to the top and leave themselves. And in Angkor Wat, as you see here, you have these steps. These are the steps to the final summit of the monument, and they are heavily damaged and very small or narrow in width. So it's, according to experts, it's not advisable to allow crowds. Only officials go there for repair or official work, and researchers can go with special permission, which is a long process. So the ASI officials helped, even they had not seen the summit. So they helped me get the permission, and they thought the entire team can come with me for that morning to go up to the top with my permission. But then when the permission came, we were in for a small disappointment. They told I can go with only 2 escorts. And so 2 of them came with me. We went right up to the top. I feel that was a very defining moment in my life and my career. The 3 of us took a photograph right on top of Angkor Wat, because at one time anyone could go there, not any longer. And then I could get enough material for a paper or a monograph on South Indian influences on Angkor Wat. We have Karaikal Ammayar in Cambodia. Just to mention 1 or 2 examples, if you want to see Karaikal Ammayar, that cult figure of medieval Tamil Nadu, you have to be in Tamil Nadu or Cambodia. You don't see her anywhere else. Pallava Grantha script, the script used by the Pallava kings of Kanchipuram, Mahabalipuram. If you leave Tamil Nadu, you see it only in Cambodia, and many other such things.
Dr. Suresh, I'm just going to interrupt a little bit. There is one comment that the voice can't be heard. Is that only for one person, or do other people have? If other people are facing that problem, could you maybe type it in the chat window? If it's a one-off thing, it might be a tech problem at that person's end. All good here. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so let's go ahead. Okay. So you had stopped at Angkor.
Yeah. So after Angkor, then it was the next defining point in my career, or rather the most important. It's not just a U-turn, but I call it a V-turn, was the Fulbright. If at all there was any one major influence which catapulted my career to meteoric heights, it has been the Fulbright. And the Fulbright selected me as a senior research fellow to go to the US for 8 months in 2011. And after 3 years, I was again awarded another Fulbright. The first one was a senior research fellowship. The second one was a little more prestigious one, academic and professional excellence lectureship. And the first one, for me, I utilized every inch of the Fulbright. And I often proudly say I was Fulbright scholar 24/7. And I could study some of the paintings in US. What you see in front of you is the US Parliament, the Capitol, which now is in the news for various reasons. And right, the dome that you see, because you may not see this again, so I'll just explain it right now. The topmost dome, or the cupola that you see here, inside the dome, there are fresco paintings comparable to those in the Vatican in Rome and in the Brihadishvara temple of Tanjavur. And the post institution there, I was affiliated to the National Trust for Historic Preservation and the neighboring University of Maryland. And the National Trust for Historic Preservation, NTHP in short, is in US counterpart of India's Intach. So I was in America's Intach, if I can say so. They arranged for me special study tours, exclusive study tours of the US Supreme Court, of how they manage the court, how they maintain the building and help restore and repair it, the US Capitol or Parliament, and the most important one, the White House itself. And this is an inside view of the White House, and they got me special permission to photograph anywhere inside the White House because it's for academic purpose. So I have a full presentation on the White House, its history, architecture, and its conservation.
What year was this?
2011.
11, okay.
Fulbright also, there is a rule. Normally, you're supposed to do a research project, but you can take up, if the visa permits, small assignments with permission from Fulbright connected with your research. It can't be that just because they allow you to take a job, one can't sit in a departmental store, but one can do lecturing or teaching or such other assignments without affecting the main program. And they have a number of stringent conditions for that. And I thought I was doing lecturing and occasional teaching, but I also wanted to be a tour guide there to know the experience there. I even tried to be a tour guide in the White House, but that was too difficult. They said, being a foreigner and with all the security issues, it would not be possible. Though I did argue, I look almost like an American. And then they told they'll get for me the next one, George Washington's boyhood home. So I think we have to go back 2 slides. After that White House slide, what you see is George Washington's boyhood home, a part of it in the same campus, where I did a number of tours for both Americans. The next one, next after, this is the White House. And the next slide where, and yeah, it's the Pope Legge House, a small wooden house, part of a big museum campus in the George Washington childhood home area in Virginia. And I did tours for the Americans there and also for many South Indians who came there for a holiday. And then the one Fulbright led to the next. I came back fully enriched. And then the second Fulbright they wanted me to do more lectures. I was good in doing lectures. Universities all over the US invited me, and Fulbright does allow it. But I thought somewhere they said there's no limit as long as it's within reasonable limits. So somewhere I had to draw a line. So I told them, this is during my second Fulbright 2015-16, where I did full-time teaching at the University of Mary Washington in Virginia, introducing a new course on South Indian art history, on South Asian art history, putting in my own researches, including numismatic art, Kerala murals, all these, including the book based on today's session. All that were prescribed as suggested reading. And so they said they'll find out a way to invite me again to do more lectures. And that led to 2018 as a Samuel Kress International Lecturer of the Archaeological Institute of America. That's it's almost the counterpart of our ASI, and they invite a non-American archaeologist, one or two every year for the last 36 years to do talks all over US and Canada. And it so happened I'm the first Asian and the first Indian to be invited on this professorship. So I visited more than 20 universities all over in US and Canada, and simultaneously taught a course, Greek and Roman travel and trade in the East at the University of Mary Washington. And they advertised it as a course which is being offered by any college or university for the first time in the world. And so after that, I'm back here again, and they have been trying to invite me again. But as you know, now things are getting postponed thanks to the pandemic, but it should get revived.
So you briefly referenced the book on the basis of which you're here as talking about Kerala murals.
Yeah,
it's the book that's called Kerala Murals, by which you have co-authored with Dr. Nambirajan of the Archaeological Survey of India.
Yeah.
And it's this wonderful volume that you put together. That's how we started talking, because like a lot of people probably were wondering till they heard this incredible introduction that you just gave. A lot of people sort of were puzzled why we have somebody from Tamil Nadu to talk about Kerala murals, which is a typically Malayali way of approaching things. We do these quirky questions. But as you co-authored that book, and and leading up to that book, you went through very extensive research in a number of mural art sites in the state, but focused primarily on the sites that are under the custodianship of the ASI.
Yeah.
So from that place of sort of research and understanding, could you give a very early sense of the origins of the Kerala style of murals? At what point, what were the influences that informed the shaping of the form? Which were the earliest sites? What were some of the landmarks in the form's evolution?
And the features of the paintings.
And we could probably talk about the features in a bit, but at least because sometimes in regional forms, you sense a sense of, you get a sense of some insularity that, these things are homegrown and they evolved entirely here. And it's sometimes mixed up with a false sense of prestige and pride. But then in the world of culture, it never works that way. There's always something that was before, and then there's something that's after. And many things keep changing all the time. So if you could generally give a sense of the early origins.
And the influences on and off the Kerala murals. Okay.
Yeah.
So Archaeological Survey of India, I'm close to them. Many of my friends and classmates are working there, and they have been commissioning me and inviting me off and on. The first project I did for them for the Chennai Circle. You may now know things are now, they are expanding. Chennai Circle, it's itself going to become 2 circles with one at Tiruchinappalli. The Chennai Circle, they wanted me to document the historical sculptures of the Vaikunta Perumal temple of Kanchipuram. That was in 2006, 2007. Then soon after that, the Tiruchur circle, which was then headed by Dr. Nambirajan, who is now in Delhi, they invited me to do the detailed documentation of the wall paintings in all the monuments in Kerala under the ASI. Why we chose ASI monuments was, number of monuments are very many all over India, including Kerala. We have to draw a line somewhere, and there are rules and restrictions, including religious restrictions, and we have to respect them. Temples are basically worship places. They are not archaeology sites, though we may view them from an archaeological point of view. And timings, and their first priority are the devotees and the rituals and dress restrictions and many other restrictions. So with all that, since it was a project of the ASI, we thought we'll do a detailed documentation of the ASI monument paintings, but we did visit and study paintings in some other temples briefly for purposes of a comparative study. And the research took me to almost all over Kerala, but the paintings and the monuments connected with under ASI with very beautiful paintings are clustered in central and southern Kerala. I went all over the place. And regarding the second part of your question, this was basically a documentation project, but it did lead to many interesting observations, which I'll come to when I show you the painting slides themselves, including unexpected comparisons with art in Cambodia. And coming to influences, Kerala, there are certain unique things of the Kerala style. Firstly, every region of the world, or every region of India at least, has its own distinct art style, and Kerala is no exception. And many regions in India have a distinct school of painting, but nowhere else in India, the whole state has one type of painting, almost like a state emblem, which only Kerala has. So that makes the Kerala style of painting unique. And then, of course, it has its own very distinctive elements in terms of color scheme, style, and so on. But definitely any painting style anywhere in the world cannot and would not have evolved on its own suddenly. It is the result of multifarious influences from neighboring areas and sometimes even from distant areas. And in turn, it would influence other art styles in other places. Coming to South India, India has a long tradition of painting, right from prehistoric times. And as I mentioned in the book, people were a bit skeptical, but then we could prove it. Man learned to paint before he learned to read, write, sing, or dance, because he saw things in the forest. He came inside the caves where he used to sleep, hiding from the wild animals, and took a stone and started drawing the figure of an elephant or a tiger that he had just seen. So the first mural painting was born. And we have several such examples in Bhimbetka in central India, and more nearer home in the Nilgiris district in Tamil Nadu, and many more. And
For
then,
us in Kerala, a similar site would be Edekal.
Yeah, definitely, which is not too far from Nilgiris. It's the same biosphere area as you know. Yeah. And then coming to recorded history, there is a misconception that South India has less paintings and more sculptures compared to the North. That's only a misconception. That's because we have not documented and publicized our paintings as much as we should. Ajanta has become world famous, and the Rajasthan and other schools of painting, but they are all of a much later date. Ajanta is 4th, 5th century, or slightly earlier or later. Exact dates can be debated by scholars. In South India, you have the earliest, if you leave out the prehistoric, which is totally different before 4000 BC, the Kailasanatha temple of Kanchipuram of the Pallavas around 8th century. A little earlier, we believe the Jain temple at Sittanavashal, Pandya near Pudukottai. And then the same period as Kailasnatha by the same ruler, again in the northern Tamil Nadu, Chengalpet region, the Talagirishwara temple at Panamalai with a beautiful painting of Parvati still surviving. And then the highest watermark, I would say, of South Indian painting style culminated in the Brihadishwara temple of Tanjavur, the big temple of Tanjore, where I would like to elaborate a bit because it has a lot of things to do with Kerala also, though it not directly. So that is early 11th century. The construction began around the king came to power around 985. The construction began soon after that. And by 1012, it ended. 1010 was the big consecration. We celebrated the 1000th anniversary 10 years ago. And that temple, many of you would be familiar with it. It has a sanctum with a linga. And around the sanctum, there is this was a drawing done by me as a student. I still retain it. Around the sanctum, there is a small circumambulatory passage, Pradakshina Pada, which today you may not be able to see. It's out of bounds for visitors, like the summit of the Angkor Wat. But if you go very close up to the Ardha Mandapa to receive the prasadam from the priest, you can see two heavy, tight-fitting doors, to put it in ASI parlance, on either side, which is the exit and the entry. But at one time, people were going in. And this passage, as you see in the drawing, it has been divided into chambers and numbers have been given. The numbers are 20th century archaeologists' numbers. The Choras didn't number it. But what the Choras did, they painted this entire passage from the ceiling to the floor, all the walls, including the side walls, the beams and columns, with religious themes mostly. And these paintings were done in fresco technique or true fresco, which is painting on wet plaster. And that's a very difficult art because you can't do wet plaster painting in an old building. I can't say I want to do fresco in my house. It's impossible. I should have done it when my house was built. Because when you build a house or a temple or a palace, whatever, you put the plaster, whatever plaster it may be, mud plaster, lime plaster, or even today's concrete plaster, before the plaster dries, which may be anywhere from 7 to 20 hours, you have to do the painting on that wet plaster, which means while you are constructing, before you do the plaster, you must have the paint pigments ready, the artists ready, and decide even on the theme so that they start the work immediately as the mason puts his brush or spade on the wall, the plaster begins to dry. Immediately, the artist should come and put his brush on the wall, that he completes the entire painting within the few hours before it dries up. And in the Chora temple of Tanjore, they did precisely that. And that plaster, the plaster there is made of sand and lime, several layers. And over that, they painted, and the lime gave it a very glossy sheen, and we believe in such wet plaster painting, the paint pigments lock themselves into the wall of the painting and become insoluble in water, that you can even clean it with water to a limited extent. It doesn't mean you can throw buckets of water in it. So that also makes it long lasting, and fresco painting is regarded as the highest or the most complex technique of wall painting. And in the whole of India, it's only in Tanjore that it has been proved it's true fresco. All other places, the word fresco is rather used loosely, whether in Kerala or Ajanta, but it's not fresco. Ajanta painting was done on dry plaster. That plaster had vegetable material also on it, and over that they did it with some gum or glue as the binding medium. They mixed the pigments with that and did it. Same technique they adopted in Sigiriya. I was blessed with opportunities to study the painting sites all over India and Sri Lanka, and much later, as I told you, in Cambodia, Europe, and even in the US. So Sigiriya painting technique in Sri Lanka, which is on top of a hill, is comparable to Ajanta, both in terms of date and technique. But
This is
Tanjore is
a
unique.
site near Anuradhapura.
Yeah. Not Anuradhapura is further north. Yeah. So Tanjore is unique. And let me just add one more glorious thing about Tanjore before we move on. This Tanjore painting is fresco, something which we can all feel proud of. We have not found a parallel to fresco anywhere else in India. We have them, some of the best frescoes in the Sistine Chapel in Rome and other places in Europe, and in the cupola of the US Capitol, and in some churches in Philadelphia. And now in the Tanjore temple, the Nayak rulers who ruled some 400 years after the Cholas, they came, the Chora frescoes were flaking, which is not surprising after 400 years of age and being exposed to the soot and smoke by the perpetual burning of lamp and by the frequent burning of camphor inside the adjoining sanctum. And the Nayaks, not knowing any other better way to preserve the painting, it was not, there was no ASI then, no archaeologists to do with modern technology. They thought they can paint over the Chora fresco. So they put a fresh plaster of sand and lime over the Chora fresco and painted over it. And in a way, they did something good for the Chora fresco. During the Anglo-French rivalry in Tanjavur, when the temple was used as a military hideout, the Nayak paintings bore the brunt of the damage, including the war ravages, thereby protecting the underlying Chora frescoes. So Nayaks did something good, and they did it with good intention. It's not that they wanted to obscure the Chora paintings. They had no other better way known to them as per the technology available then. And then it was around the early 1930s that a university professor from Annamalai University visited the place and accidentally found out that certain layers of the Nayak painting is flaking off and falling on the floor. That's not surprising. But what was surprising was when it falls on the floor, you don't see the stone wall at the back or the plaster, you see a fresh layer of painting. Thus was discovered the Chora frescoes, and that was hailed as the greatest discovery in the history of Indian painting by the Hindu newspaper then. And it created a great sensation. Then the paintings were studied, documented, and initially what they did was, they, in their enthusiasm, they scrapped off the Nayak paintings in some parts of the wall to expose the Chora painting below it. But then they realized the Nayak painting is 400 years old. It has its own value. It should not be damaged or powdered just to reveal the underlying painting, which means one has to find out some method of detaching the overlying Nayak painting without causing any damage to it, thereby exposing in the process the Chora painting on the wall. It's just like the two palms of my hand or two paper is joined on top, one above the other. You have to remove both the layers of paper without causing any damage to either of them. It's a big challenge. They are well glued. You have to take a knife or something, rip open the two layers, but you should not tear either the upper layer or the lower layer. We have had instances in Italy and elsewhere where they have transplanted an entire wall full of painting from one house or palace to another site. But even that was not too challenging because the wall had only one layer of painting. Here the wall has two layers of painting tightly sticking to one another. But it was a real challenge. Hats off to the ASI technical team. I have seen them working during my MPhil research at the University of Madras, and many times later. The process is still continuing. They found out a method of detaching the Nayak painting with the plaster supporting it, and then carefully mounting it on fiberglass stands for display in a museum inside the temple. You can still see it when you go. And then the Choda painting, which is on the wall, was later strengthened with chemicals and allowed to remain in situ on the wall itself. So it's a great achievement unknown anywhere in the world.
Dr.
And
Suresh, can I just step in for a second?
Yeah.
The great joy of my role interviewing people like you is that I get to hear about all these wonderful things and expand my knowledge every session. But then the sort of pain of it is to keep reminding people that we have the great tyrant time. That is sort of so. I just got a little piece of paper that says that we are at the 50-minute point.
Okay.
So could we?
About the influences on Kerala murals.
On the Kerala murals.
So definitely Kerala murals were influenced by these Tanjore paintings and other paintings also. And the earliest Kerala murals are at Tirunandikara, which is not in Kerala, but as you know, modern political boundaries have little relevance for ancient art studies. So they are in Tamil Nadu today. The painting, you can't compare it with the paintings in Mattancherry or elsewhere, but we believe, art historians believe, that these Tirunandikara rock cave paintings are the beginning of Kerala style. It's the rudimentary form from which the Kerala style evolved. Much later, Kerala paintings have been there for long, but most of the extant paintings are 15th century or later, whether in Chemanthitta or Pallimanna or Mattancherry. That's because paintings need to be retouched every few hundred years, and so they may have painted over it, or when a temple is damaged by fire or whatever, as it happened in Chemanthitta, they may have to do some retouching work. So the Kerala style evolved a long time back, but many of the extant paintings are of the medieval period, and they were influenced by later dynasties also, including the Tanjavur Marathas, who were contemporaries of the late medieval Travancore and Cochin kings. And there was two-way traffic in terms of political and diplomatic relations between all these kingdoms, and it had its influence on music, dance, other forms of art, including painting. And we can say there have been
Tirunandikkarai is
8th, 9th century.
Tirunandikkarai, the site, it's about 8th or 9th century, but then the generally accepted sort of golden era of the Kerala murals is sort of between the, late 14th century to the 16th century is.
Or you can even stretch it to up to 17th, 18th.
17th century. Why was there such a huge gap? Were there paintings that were produced in between, or?
No, as I mentioned to you, they were painting, but maybe the paintings did not survive. Or maybe the paintings were redone or retouched in the 14th, 15th century. So the extant paintings are from 14th century, but that doesn't mean at all that there were no paintings. So only I'm very careful in using the word surviving paintings or extant paintings. Because in Tirunandikara is the first, definitely they were painted in the 10th, 11th, 12th century, but due to various reasons, Kerala, most of the temples are laterite, and on laterite walls they paint, and some temples have had fire issues. There is recorded evidence, at least among the sites in Chemanthitta. So whenever there's any damage to painting, they may redo it or retouch it, and we take the later date as the date of the painting.
The sort of larger population of the paintings are in temples, almost exclusively in temples. And the sort of population of the sort of mature structural temples, I think they increase towards the 11th century, 12th century, 13th century.
I do agree. They say, it coincides with the Bhakti movement.
Bhakti movement.
So more temples, more paintings. That is a valid reason. Because it was religious art basically, though it's not that all in India all art is basically religious, but we have secular themes even in Kerala murals, but then religious themes predominate. It was basically meant for the temple, and when more temples were built, you see more temples with paintings also.
I realize that we've been on a talk about Kerala murals for about 3/4 of an hour, and somebody who's a first timer
Hmm.
must be wondering what on earth is a Kerala mural. So I think it's time that we talked about what a Kerala mural is, what are its defining features, how does one look,
Okay.
how do they vary, and so on. So could you describe some of the defining features of the form itself? Also, some of the signature techniques in its production,
Okay.
and also the Panchavarna scheme aspects of that nature.
Now, Kerala painting, as I told you, has certain unique features, but some of them are overlapping. You may trace them in other styles also.
Right.
Now, just like the Tanjavur frescoes about which we dealt with in great detail, in Kerala painting also, it's done on stone wall, granite or laterite, and in Kerala, laterite predominates. And over that, they put a plaster. And just like the plaster in Tanjavur and many other places in India, plaster basically consists of sand and lime. But the proportion varies. Even within Kerala, different artists gave me different proportions. So I'm not able to quote exactly. It may, they did say it varies from place to place, even within Kerala, and even in the same site, the individual artist can decide depending on the contours of the stone and other requirements. They put at least 2 layers, and the first layer is sand and lime, then it's graded. The second layer is again sand and lime of maybe of a finer or more powdered variety, and the second layer would have cotton fibers also into it, and then they finally round it off. The final layer is more like a wash or a whitewash, according to one artist. They use the juice of the coconut, which is available in plenty, the coconut water, and mix it with lime or calcium carbonate, and go on putting it on the plaster. The number of times they do it may vary from temple to temple or region to region, till they get a very fine finish and a milk white color almost. And why they do this is the white color is derived that way. They, in any Kerala painting, if they want white, anything to be painted in white, they don't have to prepare a pigment in white. This white background takes care of it. They leave the white places unpainted. So that's how the plaster layer is prepared in stages. Then the painting itself, they're beautifully defined it. There are old texts on Indian painting in Sanskrit and other languages, which are true for Kerala painting. And Silparatna, a text of around the 16th, 17th century by Sri Kumara, is detailing these techniques in little more detail. And then 5 major stages after the plaster is ready for making the painting. They start with the line work, which is done with pencils or crayons of those days. The brush comes later. And so that is the Lekya Karma. And then after that, they do the Rekha Karma, which is they highlight these crayon lines with a brush. And then it's Varna Karma, which is the core of the whole process, the actual painting. Then the shading, the Vartana Karma. And then they have the Lekha Karma, which is giving sort of improving on it with a in black with a brush, highlighting the contours and so on. And finally, we have the finishing touches, which is basically they give it a fine sheen or polish. You can use the word polish, though it's not actually polish. It gives a fine sheen by using pine or sesame oil on it to give it a very gleaming appearance. And so these are the 5 stages. And one thing that stands out, which anyone, even a lay person looking at Kerala painting, even I could observe it even before I started my study. In Kerala painting, they give great importance to the contours, to the outlines. The outlines are very prominently well defined, whether it's the outline of a human body or an animal or a panel, unlike the paintings in Tanjavur or Ajanta or many other places. And that's why they make the outlines in crayon and later use the brush. The outlines are mostly in black and it's done very prominently. And then basically the color palette is limited in Kerala murals, but that doesn't in any way make the Kerala murals less colorful. They are most colorful. That shows the skill of the artist. Basically, traditionally, the colors are 5, the Panchavarna, and these 5 colors are black, white, red, yellow, and green. And blue is not included. Even I was shocked to know this, because when you're painting gods, and blue is a color, very important, prestigious, respected color in Hindu mythology. We have Krishna and Rama who are blue, and Shiva had his throat with the poison in blue color, Nilakanta, and so on. But blue is not there among the Panchavarna. And one artist gave me a reason. They did use, both in Tanjavur and in Kerala at some point, they did use lapis lazuli for blue. And even in later times, we have extensively used lapis lazuli. Even in a church in Egmore in Chennai in the 18th, 19th century, we used lapis lazuli for painting the ceiling. But then lapis lazuli is not locally available in South India. The best ones are available from Badakhshan in Afghanistan. So it's expensive, not easily available. So they tend to avoid it. And so at least even in the paintings that I saw, I hardly saw any blue. Blue is very rare in Kerala murals. And how they get these colors, red and yellow, are from ochres. And then here I would just like to make one observation. Again, it's a misconception. Whenever anyone writes, a journalist or anyone, offhand they say all ancient paintings they did with vegetable juice, fruit juice, and leaf, and so on. It's true, but that's not always correct. They had enough knowledge of chemicals and use of chemicals, and chemical pigments were prepared. For example, as early as the 10th century, the black used in the Tanjavur frescoes initially was thought to be charcoal or lamp black, but later chemical investigation revealed that it's manganese dioxide. And even in Kerala murals, red and yellow are from ochres, and green is got by mixing indigo or nilamari with the juice of the monkey fruit or mangosteen fruit. And then the white is already there on the base, and the black, they have a very ingenious way they got it. It was lamp black. How they got it was they soaked cotton wicks in sesame oil and burnt it, and the black residue of it was carefully taken out from the wick and put in a small bowl and used for black. So that these are the 5 basic colors. And then all these colors were mixed or kept in a wooden bowl, and they used, what was the binding medium? In all ancient paintings, there should be a binding medium. In Tanjavur, it was lime. In Ajanta, it was some other glue or gum. But in Kerala mural, traditionally, it was an extract from the neem tree or the margosa tree, Vepa Maram, which has a sticky substance to it. And that was mixed with these pigments, and that gave the adhesion, strong adhesion for these paint pigments to stick on the wall. And they used brush made of arrow grass or elephant grass, and the stand of the brush was made with bamboo, all locally available in Kerala. Elsewhere in India, we have had brush made of camel hair and even squirrel hair and so on. And in Kerala, one artist told me rarely they used to take the tiny hair from the ear of the calves and used it for brushes. But then that practice was not popular at any time, and it is no longer in use now. So these are the distinct things. Things are changing, but I think traditional artists are still sticking to it, all to their credit.
So to just overview, it's essentially the 5-color, the Panchavarna palette,
Yeah.
the 5-stage process with where there is a distinct emphasis on the outlining. Uh, um, the fact that there is one style that sort of extends across a whole geography. These are in a sort of broad sense the sort of defining features. Also, you always hear about the sort of intricate iconography that defines the treatment of subjects.
Yeah,
Do you have any observations on
yeah.
that?
I will come to it. I thought I'd explain it when I show the examples. And
Okay.
it's basically religious art, basically for temples. Though we do have evidences to show that they used it in palaces. Mattancherry is a good example. They would have used it in other palaces, but paintings being fragile things do not last too long unless it's properly taken care. So Mattancherry is a good, in fact, in the whole of India, we have, at least in South India, we have very few examples of paintings surviving in palaces. And Mattancherry is a very good example of that, because we know from literature, palaces had chitrasalas, and reading that, tourists and even foreigners ask, where can you find it? And we can only point out to Mattancherry in our part of the country. But otherwise, basically, it was for temples. It was done in panels. But from temple to temple, even in the temples that I studied, there is no uniformity in terms of the size of the panels or the themes depicted. Sometimes, as in Tripurayar, one panel can be crowded with multiple themes depicted on it. Or sometimes, as in Peruvanam, we had one panel with one god or goddess. And all Hindu gods and goddesses were featured, all the major ones, Shiva and different forms of Shiva like Dakshinamurti, Vishnu, different forms of Vishnu, including the 10 incarnations, the favorite ones in Kerala being Krishna and Narasimha, and of course, Vamana and so on. And Parasurama, special attachment. I need not explain. Kerala is considered Parasurama's country. And then we have some of the local Hindu gods, but more localized, more, you see more of their forms in Kerala. Kirata Sunu, Ayyappan, Mohini. Mohini we do see in Tamil Nadu, but not as much as in Kerala. And then these
Shastra, Kurumagan, these are especially
so
towards
all
the
connected
north.
with Ayyappan, I would say.
Mm.
And then, of course, we start, traditionally, the panels were not standing alone, but we do have standalone panels also in temples. It started with Bhutaganas, one small frieze, narrow band of Bhuta-like figures. And then it would be Bhutamala, then it would be Pakshimala, some birds. Then it was Pumala or Vanamala or Pushpamala, referring to the Mashipukal, or a type of stylized white flower, which are used as space fillers and borders in many Kerala paintings. And this Mashipukal is again a distinct Kerala space filler and border decoration. And then you also have another type of border decoration. I'll show when I show the panels, Virali Pattu, which is locally called jovially sari border decoration or carpet decoration. And they say the soldiers of some of the local Kerala kings had that decoration on their clothes or on the soldiers' army uniform at one time. And that's more colorful and linear in design. So, but it's not that all these designs are found in all temples. You have panels without the Mashipukal, without this Bhutamala, Pushpamala and Vanamala and so on. And either those bands were not painted, only the panel was painted, or maybe the bands were painted but have faded off and only the panel survives today. Both is equally plausible.
Were there any sort of formal rules that defined the use of these embellishments, the border devices, fillers, etc., or was that left to the individual artist's discretion?
I think I will have to make an interpretation here, an intelligent interpretation based on my research. And what the interviews that I had with some of the practicing artists, there is no rule for these border decorations. In some temples, the panels don't have a well-defined border at all. They end at one place and another panel starts. It's just a line, not a well-defined border. But in many temples, they do have a well-defined border. Tripurayar is a good example where there are 27 panels, each well-defined. So for a student or a scholar like me, it was not difficult. Otherwise, it's a problem in Tanjavur, in many places for me to know where one panel ends and the other begins, and also to put it in a book or a tourist guidebook or explain to visitors. So, but in Tripurayar, it was well defined. In many other places, it was not. And this Mashipukal, the stylized white flower unique to Kerala mural, sometimes it's used as a border decoration, sometimes it's used to demarcate one panel from the other. Sometimes it forms a distinct frieze or band above a panel. Rarely it's used as a space filler inside the panel or a background behind a particular figure. And in some temples, you don't see them at all. So I feel it's these are the art liberties which the artist was allowed to take.
So there is a question. I promised that we'll pause for a set of questions, but I'll just take one question at this point because we're sort of running out of time. Okay. So Jayakrishnan Menon has this comment. I don't know if you have a complete answer on it. So his view is that blue can be achieved not only using lapis lazuli, but also using the Nila Amari. So why was blue not used? Because Nila Amari is available here.
I would agree with the first part of it, definitely. It's not that in many places where lapis lazuli is not a very common thing all over the world, though we know of it. But in many places, they have used blue. So I do agree there are other ways of obtaining blue. It's not only lapis lazuli and Nila Amari. When we are making use of it to make a sister color green, we can tone it down to a particular level, maybe with other pigments, and make blue of it. I do agree of it from my research experience. But for the second, I don't have a clear-cut answer why they didn't make blue and use it extensively in Kerala murals. Even Rama and Krishna, who are normally taken to be blue as per the scriptures, they have also been painted in green. And one thing here I would just like to state, it's relevant to the answer, but it could have been stated earlier. In Kerala murals, they also have a distinct guideline of what color to be used for different classes of people or figures. The saintly and divine figures and gods are usually painted in green. And human beings and gods and goddesses in human forms are usually painted in red, yellow, or white. But there are exceptions. Yellow is also taken to be synonymous with gold. You can't distinguish between golden color and yellow color in an ancient mural. So we take it as almost one and the same. And the demons or wrongdoers are painted in black or shades of black. So this is again unique to Kerala murals. We don't see such a clear-cut defined guideline in any other art style anywhere else in our part of the world. And of course, there are major exceptions even in the temple sites that I studied. But black is reserved only rarely for the wrongdoers or those who are not the ideal ones. And between the other colors, green, red, yellow, and white, they are interchanged. And I have had example where Shiva is painted in white, though he is a god definitely of the highest order, and so on. So they have used all these colors. I have not come across any blue in the nearly 1,000 panels that I studied in detail. I don't have a clue. An artist maybe should answer. Although blue could have been used, they did not use it in Kerala and in many other places. Why they did do it, I have no clear-cut answer.
But they do often do a sort of blue-green. They do have different shades of green, like a sort of aqua color. You do see characters who are a green and a blue, like Krishna would have a slightly more bluey green, whereas, I don't know, Putana might be a very green. So there is a certain modulation of the green that one sees from time to time.
Could be. It could be that, as you said, bluish green or greenish blue, but not the blue that you see as the background in Tanjavur Maratha murals and such other things. I do agree, yeah. But mostly Krishna, as you see, you can say it has some blue in it, but it's mostly green. It's taken as green. We don't take it as blue because it has more of green in it. They could have done, as I rightly, as was pointed out, I do agree, it's not impossible to get blue out of it, but probably because it was not in the Panchavarna, they avoided it. Probably. The artists maybe can say why they have been avoiding it through the centuries.
I don't know if this is the reason or it's a logic that was retrofitted, but we also hear the choice of colors mapped onto the gunas. Take away black and white, the other three colors are usually mapped onto the three gunas, the sattva guna, rajoguna, and tamoguna. So I don't know if it seems like it's a logic that was retrofitted later, but more or less the same principles, although it's not exactly subject of this conversation, you see more or less the same principles extending to the sort of aharya of our sort of performance art forms also, of Kathakali and Kudiyattam. So, so I don't know if that was a restricting factor. But anyway, I think now we should move on to looking at some actual pictures. So what I wanted to do during the session also was to sort of draw upon your experience of looking at some of these finest of these murals from across the state, and maybe you could talk about some of your personal favorites, and also talk about why they're your favorites, and in the process give us a sense of how we could view these paintings when we run into them.
Okay, definitely. And here I'd just like to mention one thing before I start. I have my favorites like everyone, but I do agree what is my favorite need not be everyone's favorite. And I have my own reasons, and of course it's very difficult. All the paintings were outstanding. So it's just like in a class of 40 bright students, it's very difficult to say who is the best or the second best. But when you're asked to choose, you have to make a choice on some basis. So that was the only reason.
No, your choices won't be held against you. The reason I thought we do this is because these murals, even now, even at a time when a lot of them have sort of degenerated, some of them have been overpainted, even now for an average Malayali, it is probably the most easily accessible form of art available. Not very far from wherever you're living the state, there would be a mural, a temple with mural panels. But then either because we don't know how to penetrate it, or because they're just, familiarity sort of breeding a certain form of contempt, we don't always engage with them. So by talking about them, maybe you could open our eyes to look at them with a new eye.
Definitely. I hope I can succeed on it. So I think the first one would be, I think what I sent was from Peruvanam. I think it's coming up.
The great Shiva temple. Near
the Mahadeva temple. I'm just showing the temple also. In most of the temples that I did the detailed documentation, the paintings are mostly, there are a lot of major exceptions on the outer wall of the Sri Koil or the Garbhagriha. And in many of the temples, as all of you know, the Sri Koil is circular, and this is from Peruvanam. Peruvanam paintings are good, but some of them are showing signs of damage, and only one part of the Sri Koil has painted panels. We don't know whether the other part was left unpainted or there were paintings which later faded off. And among them, I've chosen one. I thought I should give you at least one from every temple I saw, at least one. From some places I've taken even 2, 3. So from Peruvanam, my choice would be one of my favorite deities, Saraswati. In fact, I'm writing a book on Saraswati in Indian art. It's a difficult thing because I'm trying to collect all Saraswati figures in sculptures and paintings from all over India and further beyond in Nepal, other parts of South and Southeast Asia. and Karan Singh, the former Union Minister and from the royal family of Kashmir. You would have all heard of him, and a founder member of Intach, under whose auspices this event is being held. We have been in touch. He says his favorite god is also Saraswati, and he's looking forward to the book and he wants to release it. Let's hope it happens soon. Now, Saraswati is a very important god. We all pray to her as students for examinations. She's like the Minerva of the Greco-Roman divinities. Yeah, for muses, music, dance, wisdom. And we all know about her, but representation in art is rare for some unknown, obscure reasons. And even in Kerala murals, she is shown among the 1,000 panels that I examined, only 2 have Saraswati. One was in Pallimanna, where she is shown with the veena. Modern, in later centuries, Saraswati, today she's invariably holding the stringed musical instrument, the veena. But in earlier days, as you see in this, it was not compulsory. She had other things. Even in the Tanjavur temple, Dharasuram, I have a favorite Saraswati there. She holds the Akshamala, which again represents knowledge. And here also she holds it in her upper right hand. Her upper left hand holds a rectangular object, which we take as a palm leaf manuscript or a book representing the Vedas or wisdom. Then one of her hands is in the posture. Her lower right hand is in the posture of blessing people, Varada Mudra, and her lower left hand is in Vyakhyana Mudra, which they say is a teacher's posture of explaining a point. And she, being the greatest of all teachers, she is often shown with one of her hands in Vyakhyana Mudra, explaining a point. And she's here seated on a lotus. And we have very beautiful Saraswati images in stone near Peruvanam. One of them is in the Tiruchur Museum and also in the Padmanabhapuram Palace and many other places. And I think we'll go to the next temple, which is, now this is, we are coming towards Vadakunadar, which is in Tiruchur, a famous temple all of you know, but it has many paintings. It has paintings it has basically 3 shrines, as you know, the Vadakunada shrine, the Shankaranarayana shrine, and the Sri Rama shrine. And the outer wall of all the 3 Sri Koils contain paintings, and we documented all of them. But except Shankaranarayana, the other 2 are supposed to be much later, even 18th, 19th century. So it was not published in the book, but I have the documentation. Of the 3, the Shankaranarayana temple Sri Koil paintings are supposed to be the oldest. But in addition, Vadakunadar, it's a big campus, as you know. There are paintings in 3-4 other places, and some of them are unique masterpieces. Next, can we see it? Yeah. Now, as you enter Vadakunadar, you have to pass through the Nandi Mandapa to approach the 3 main shrines. And there on the wall to your left, as you enter, the entire wall is covered by this huge painting. In the photograph, we tried our best. We could not avoid this column, which is obscuring the painting a little, but we thought it has to look natural. So this is Panivara Shivan. Seshasai Vishnu is common. We all know Vishnu is shown seated, standing, or sleeping. School teachers sometimes tell students Vishnu is the only god who can sit, stand, or even sleep in a temple. No other god can do it. And even I thought so till I did this project. Then here you have Shiva in slumber, and you have Parvati next to him, his hand resting on her. If you observe closely, the dark-skinned or green-skinned Parvati, and then near his legs it's Ganga, who is always painted in white, whether in Kerala or Tamil Nadu or even in the miniature paintings of Rajasthan. Ganga is always painted in white, and you have Ganga by his feet. And this, it's called Panivara Shivan or Vasuki, Panivara Shayanam or Vasuki Shayanam, Vasuki or Panivara referring to the snake on which he is sleeping. And they say in Kerala, it is uncommon, but not very uncommon. There are a few examples even near Palakkad, which I have not seen. And of course, Tiruchur is one of the biggest and most famous of this form of Shiva, a very rare form of Shiva. Next, we have another one on the adjoining wall. Since this room is dark, as you see from the photograph itself, people often don't observe the painting and walk past it to the inner sanctums. This is Nataraja with 20 hands holding different war weapons. Probably, I have not seen a Nataraja with 20 hands and more. We have seen Nataraja with 8 hands, 12 hands, even in Ehole Badami, and also Nataraja with 16 hands in Tiruvanchikulam. I'm going to show you shortly, but Nataraja with 20 hands, I see only in Vadakunada. And then when you enter inside, the main thing is the Shankaranarayana Sri Koil, where you have a series of paintings, some of them damaged. It originally, some older books, Vadakunada has been fairly well publicized and documented. Older books said they represent paintings, or these Shankaranarayana Sri Koil paintings are from Ramayana. But then a close observation revealed it's not Ramayana, it's Mahabharata. Although Mahabharata art is less common in Kerala than Ramayana ones, but definitely it's Mahabharata. And there's a striking example, a clinching example, which no one can dispute, that it is from Mahabharata. If you see the next one. One of the last slides, it shows different princes fighting, but both the war scenes are common to Ramayana and Mahabharata. So it's really a tricky thing. But towards the end of the narrative panel, you have one Bhishma sleeping or resting on a bed of arrows. All of you know the story. And then I realized all over India, Mahabharata sculptures are portrayed, but then this particular thing of a particular action-packed scene of Bhishma on the bed of arrows is not portrayed. They portray the war, portray the results of the war, and pass by. And I was wondering why this is so, until one priest gave me an answer. He told it's his interpretation, a priest from Kerala, in fact. They don't do it because of the pain and pathos that it invokes for all of us. Bhishma is such a respected figure. We know the sacrifice that he did and all the good work that he did. And to see him on a bed of arrows, although it's a true thing, what he did, we do believe, awaiting death at the Uttarayana Punyakala, it's not featured in art, whether in North India or elsewhere. In Tamil Nadu, I can't show you a single specimen of art, whether in sculpture or painting or any other form, of this particular Bhishma on a bed of arrow, though I can show you any number of Mahabharata paintings and sculptures. But in Kerala, we do have a few examples, and this is a close-up view. You see Bhishma, how very courageously he's sleeping on a bed of arrows, resting on it so casually with his hand on his hand below his head, as if you're resting on a cushioned pillow. And we have some examples which I could trace from elsewhere. And the next one, this is Bhishma.
What is the secondary figure in, if you could just go back, Dr. Suresh, what is the secondary figure in the, do you recall?
Which one, where?
In the Bhishma, the Sharashaya, the secondary figure, is that Arjuna?
Yeah, it could be Arjuna, because we have, that is Bhishma is fighting with Arjuna till the previous panel. So here also it could be Arjuna, and the exchange of arrows is being done between both sides, Bhishma on one side and Arjuna on the other, and that is there just below this sleeping panel.
Also, I'll just pause for a second. These are all panels where you can see those decorative details also. So as they come.
Yeah, you can see the Pushpamala very clearly above the Bhishma on the bed of arrow, and other bands are not there here, but you can. I'll show it to you in some of the succeeding panels. And then you have some parallels in the whole of India. Bhishma on the bed of arrow. This set me thinking. Only when I did the Kerala one, I realized it. But just before I took up the Kerala mural project, I'd been to Cambodia. So that was a real coincidence, a divine coincidence. This is from Pattadakkal, from the Virupaksha temple in Pattadakkal, where on the pillars or columns in front, in the main mandapa in front of the main sanctum, you have the Mahabharata sculptures, and there they have boldly depicted beautifully Bhishma on the bed of arrows. But the biggest and the most prominent example is from the Angkor Wat, where on one wall they have featured the entire Ramayana, and correspondingly on the other wall they have featured the entire Mahabharata, and there you see Bhishma on the bed of arrows. And I'm told we do have examples in some other places, but people do agree it's rare. Mahabharata sculptures are common, but they do skip Bhishma on the bed of arrow for various reasons. So but in Kerala murals, I'm told, apart from in my study, I could see it only in Vadakunadar, but I'm told it is there in a few other temple paintings, but it is uncommon. And now we will move on to the next temple. Yeah, and this is Triprayar. It's one of my favorites. It has its own intricacies. It's a temple for Rama. As you know, only Kerala has this unique distinction of 4 temples for the 4 brothers. And if you visit all the 4 temples during a particular month, July, August, I think it's called Karkataka. Am I right?
That's right.
Yeah. And they say you're thrice blessed, and also you will not fight with your brothers if you do that. And so this temple is for Rama, and it has 27 panels, and there were technical issues in documenting it. It's a very sharp circle, and so the paintings are always in a curved surface. So photography was a challenge, and each panel is quite big, and one panel shows multiple episodes. So it was a real challenge. This is one of my favorites and the most complicated. So we'll stop here for a few minutes so that this will give you a representative sample of a Kerala Triprayar panel. You can see the Pushpamala on top, which is very clear, like a band. And then to your left, the audience left, you will see a green figure, 8-armed. It's Agoramurti Shiva. The main Vishnu in Cambodia and many of the other Hindu sculptures in Cambodia are Ashtabhuja, 8-armed. In Tamil Nadu, you have them, but not many. In Kerala murals, you have many 8-armed figures. You have Ashtabhuja Venugopala. I have not seen it in Tamil Nadu or elsewhere, except in Kerala. Again, Ashtabhuja Agoramurti, I'm seeing it only in Kerala. I have seen Agoramurti in Tamil Nadu, but not Ashtabhuja. Here you have this green Ashtabhuja Shivan, Agoramurti, very fierce looking with weapons. And to his right on the top, you see 2 figures with horse-like faces. They may be Ashwini Deva, the sons of Surya, the sun god. Now we come to a more dramatic part of the picture to your right. And there you see the Vishvarupa Vishnu on the extreme right with his right foot lifted up above almost to the heavens. And you all know the story of Vamana. And there's one thing here unique, which is not very clear. The left foot of this Vishvarupa Vishnu, Lakshmi, green colored Lakshmi is hugging it, but she's not very prominent in the picture. Then in front of him, you have a person, a mendicant, a small boy-like person sitting cross-legged, yellow colored. And then you have 2 dramatic action-packed things being done here. You have the multi-headed Brahma in yellow. He is having his kindi, or the traditional kettle with a long spout through which he is pouring water on the sacred feet of the Vishvarupa Vishnu. And this water is supposed to represent the river Ganga, and appropriately you see a female white figure just below the spout, which is to represent Ganga. This scene is featured in other parts of India, but no other artist has featured a physical or anthropomorphic form of the goddess below to show its Ganga. And there's a further significance to this here. This Triprayar is located on the bank of a river, the Porayar River, which is supposed to be a branch of the Periyar. And this water from Brahma's kettle, it is supposed to be Tirupadai Aru, sacred feet river, which is to represent the neighboring river. And this name Tirupadai Aru later became Tiruporayar, and the place itself came to be called Triprayar. So now you have the story of what why the name Triprayar, and it is also supposed to represent the Ganga. And then you have, it's so interesting, done by the artist, another smaller kettle held by Mahabali. He is pouring water on the right hand of this mendicant to clinch the promise that he has made. By pouring water, you are signing the document, so to say, that you are promising someone of something. And Shukracharya, the wise sage and advisor to Mahabali, knows the trick played by Vamana. He knows there's something going wrong here. He tries to warn Mahabali to prevent making the promise. So some of you may know the mythological tale. Shukracharya, by his divine powers, transforms himself into dry grass or darbai, enters the kettle and tries to block the spout so that the water does not fall on the right hand of the mendicant and the promise is not made. But the mendicant is too clever. He takes a stick and pokes it into the spout to move away the dry grass so that the water falls freely. And that stick injures Sukracharya's left eye. This is the story. And so in many paintings and sculptures, Shukracharya is shown with an injured left eye. And in this painting, appropriately, the white-skinned or fair-skinned Shukracharya is standing behind Mahabali, gently rubbing his left eye to indicate that he has had some pain or injury there. So this panel is of great significance for the place, for the name of the place, for the river flowing close by, and the artistic merit of having rendered multiple episodes within such a small confines of one panel canvas.
So I wish we had, this is entirely on us, we should have done zoomed in parts of each of those things, but this is such a remarkable piece. Maybe people who are watching, if you're interested, maybe we'll hold it for another few seconds. You could probably take a screen grab and zoom into the details later on, because it's quite a remarkable piece when you look closer, and there are so many fine details which elevate it.
And so many unknown and interesting and rare stories weaved into it.
Yeah. And
in fact, I was wanting to announce it at the end. Maybe you're most welcome to see it in close quarters and try to zoom it. And also, I would let the pandemic end and let the vaccines come. We will arrange. Palakkad Intach can do it. Many Intach chapters have done. We'll do a painting tour of Kerala for all of you.
Definitely, that's done.
And many of my travel industry friends have invited. They are in the session, I think. So they'll be able to get us a good deal with all the hotels and all the transport.
Of course. We could also do a virtual tour, but for now, I think if you do take a screen grab, there are a few more that are coming up. But I think now we'll move.
The others are not as complicated as this. This is really complicated, and I chose this because others are there, but they are the usual stories, Rama's coronation and so on. But I thought this is something unique and has a special significance for Triprayar. And
also, when you look at it closer, you see so many decisions that the artist navigated through, many choices where it could have been done in one way or another, and that's where you do enjoy, where it becomes more than a piece of craft and indeed an art form. So let's move on to the next one.
And now, just to show you examples, this is from Mahabalipuram, the famous Varaha Mandapa. or Varaha cave temple, the same. Here, the Vishwarupa Vishnu is lifting his left feet towards the heaven. There it was the right feet. But why I put this picture is here also you can see Brahma watering his feet. So, and this is again supposed to be the river Ganga, but then the Ganga is not depicted here. But then next slide may have a significance. The famous sculpture of Mahabalipuram, which although there's a controversy on its theme, but mostly today it's taken not as Arjuna's penance, but as Bhagirath's penance to bring down the river Ganga. That Gangavataranam or Ganga's descent panel is just behind the Varaha cave temple. So I feel it is not an accidental coincidence. So you saw the Varaha temple with the Ganga, Brahma washing the feet of Vishwarupa Vishnu there, and just behind you have the Ganga's descent. This is a more recent picture. It is lighted at night after the recent Narendra Modi and Chinese president meeting. They are illuminating the monuments, but now the monuments are closed, as you know, for the pandemic. But so this picture was taken very recently. We can move on, I think.
Just step in for half a minute. Mr. Sunny in between had made an observation that there are murals inside many Christian churches, and that is very true. But we are not covering those today because simply because they were not part of the project that Dr. Suresh did. But indeed, in the sort of late medieval and more modern times, there are churches with very beautiful murals that depict themes that are not from the Hindu sort of.
But in true Kerala style, yeah.
In the same style and the same craftspeople and the same artists.
We do agree. I'm sorry, only thing we didn't cover it in our documentation, but I have seen them, churches with biblical theme paintings, definitely yes.
And also there are secular themes. It's not only, so if there are people who are constrained by the fact that you can't enter a Hindu temple, there are many sort of secular spaces, such as Dr. Suresh mentioned the Mattanjeri Palace, but there are houses that have these paintings. There are many houses. There are some temples which have more relaxed entry norms, where if you're genuinely interested to learn about the paintings, they allow access. So there are many opportunities if you'd like to sort of further your understanding of these of this art form. So I think we can move on to the next section.
Yeah. Can we go to the next temple?
Yeah, it's coming up. I think it's a bandwidth. It's a little slow. The next picture that you wanted to draw upon was.
I think it's the Mattancheri Palace.
The Mattancheri Palace, yeah. Yeah, is that where
or
you
is it
found
Mattancheri or Chemanthitta temple?
Okay.
If it's a circular one, it's Chemanthitta.
Okay.
Because in Chemanthitta also I had taken one figure as a representative example, the Ashtabhuja Venugopala.
Okay. You said that you had seen pictures of non-religious figures in a few sites.
Yeah. For example, in Mattancheri itself, we have a painting of a Muslim king. Although some people doubt it, what it is, definitely they say it's a Muslim king. It could be Tipu Sultan, who did come to Kerala, who was familiar with Kerala, judging by his, this is Mattancheri Palace, and judging by his typical trademarks.
Mysore Peta.
You have Tipu Sultan witnessing a dance performance as a painting on the walls of the Mattancheri Palace alongside the Hindu deities. So they were there. I'm going to show it to you shortly. Now we have come to Mattancheri Palace. Again, some of the masterpieces, that Ramayana room or the bedroom, which is called the Ramayana room because of the Ramayana paintings. It has some remarkable thing. Again, it's the skill of the artist. Very crowded paintings. For a lay onlooker, it can really look something very confusing, but it does have a very good meaning. It has been done with a sense of proportion, definitely, but too many things intelligently crammed and beautifully crammed in a small space. And this is the first one. It shows the birth of the four brothers. You can see on a small napkin or mat, the four babies, Rama, Lakshmana, Bharata, and Shatrughna. And Dasharatha performing the Putra Kameshti Yajna, and the fire you see, and the fire god is coming out of the fire and with a bowl or a plate with some white foam on the top. If you see towards the left, and that white is the payasam, and Dasharatha is holding and distributing the white payasam or the sweet to the three queens in the lower part of the panel, and the three queens in turn beget four sons. I'm not going into the details because you know the story. It's a beautiful representation of the Ramayana initial episode, and to your extreme left you have Vishnu blessing the entire gathering. Next one.
On that note, I was just wondering, would you say that this sort of denseness of the landscape, the fact that there is so much detail packed into any given frame, is that would you say that's a distinctive feature of?
Not exactly, because you don't have it everywhere. Peruvanam, it's not that much. Even Tiruvanjikulam, you don't have such crowded panels. Tiruparayar, yes. Mattancherry, yes. Even in Mattancherry, only in the Ramayana room, probably the theme, Ramayana is such a complex and long story, and if you have to do it in one room, they had to do this. In other rooms, it's at a slow pace, if I can use that word. This is a close-up view of the same scene. You see the four babies once again, a close-up view. Next one, I've only taken representative samples of the Ramayana. You have many other things. And this is a very defining painting, a favorite of many people. It's at the height of the war, where the elephant is sent to wake up the sleepy Kumbhakarna, the mighty Kumbhakarna. And next one, we are almost coming to the end of the Ramayana. It's again a very sort of a well-known episode of the epic towards the end, Sita's fire ordeal. And Sita is seen, and above Sita, the figure is Agnideva himself. And to the right of Sita, you have Rama, and behind him are the two monkey-faced figures, which could be Hanuman and Sugriva. And then to the left of Sita, you would have Lakshmana, and next to him would be Vibhishana, and many of the other figures of the epic.
So just to chip in, one of the things which I think if we do go on a painting tour, we will of course do that preparation for you. But if you are going into a temple with a view of appreciating these paintings, a caution would be to sort of look up the Puranic references, because that is very crucial to your appreciation of these paintings, because the scripts indeed sort of determine the sort of content choices, which I think is true of any classical form, even a dance form or even Carnatic music.
Now in Mattancherry, you have the paintings spread over 2 to 3 rooms, 3 rooms to be very precise, on the upper side. And now for the last several years, the rules keep changing. You know, Mattancherry Palace is a monument, a very tourist monument, ticketed monument of the Archaeological Survey of India. And so for various reasons, at some points of time, they are restricting access to the lower part of the monument for tourist groups. And so the lower part also has some remarkable paintings. They were allowing tourists to the lower part. You have to go down the steps, but then not any longer, as far as I know. And once you go down, you have 2 rooms, and that extreme end room is called the Queen's bedroom. And the one in front of it, where you land from the staircase, that's called the ante room, or the room in front of the bedroom. And the bedroom has some remarkable paintings of different themes. Krishna with gopis, and Krishna lifting the Govardhana hill, and many more such paintings. But the room in front of this bedroom, it looks as if it has no painting, because it's heavily damaged. There is Archaeological Survey officials did once tell me, but it's a thing which happened long ago, so you can't be too sure of it. They said this room also had paintings, but it was whitewashed long back before the ASI came into the picture. And after ASI took over, they came to know that the painting has been painted over. So they carefully removed the whitewash to reveal the paintings below. This could very well be true because ASI has had to do this in many other places all over India. Because before ASI took over, the local authorities were not too conversant with conservation techniques, and if there's any damage, they'll paint over it. Whatever that may be, at least 3 walls, maybe it was painted on all 4 walls, but at least 3 walls, there are traces of painting, but heavily damaged. They are not colorful paintings, but look more like pencil sketches, or if I can use another modern word, stencil sketches with black and orange ochre colors predominating. And they show the Kalyanotsavam, or the wedding of Lord Shiva. And one ASI official said among the official circles, they do believe that the paintings are as per the description of Shiva's marriage in Kalidasa's Kumara Sambhava. But he wanted me to check it up before putting it on in the report, and fortunately I have in my father's collection all the works, Kalidasa Granthavali, all the works of Kalidasa with the translation. I did check it up, and that led to some remarkable observations. It's true. The paintings on this wall showing Shiva's marriage, at least some panels aptly one-to-one match with the minute descriptions given in chapters 5, 6 and 7 of Kalidasa's Kumara Sambhava, but there are 1 or 2 panels of Shiva coming in a procession for the wedding, and Parvati holding a garland in her hand. It's an open garland, not a circular garland, but I think you got it what I meant. But an open garland, and other ladies are leading her. These 2 episodes depicted among these painted panels are not described in Kumara Sambhava. But the one important thing, Shiva wants Parvati, and he wants someone from his side to go and do the proposal to Himavan, the father of Parvati, and the Saptarishis, 7 sages and 1 lady. And again, as I said, a lady is needed whenever you go for a marriage proposal. So Vasishta, one of the senior sages, his wife Arundhati. So it's 7 plus 1. 8 people go and meet Himavan, and that is described exactly in Kumara Sambhava, and we have the same featured here. And then you have the actual marriage. What you see here is the actual marriage, Vishnu giving away Parvati to Shiva with Himavan looking on, and with all the celestial beings gathered. Brahma and Saraswati, Saraswati astride on the swan, Vishnu with Lakshmi, even the Ashwini Devas, the son of Surya, they have all come for the wedding. So it's all this is described, and definitely the artist has consulted Kumara Sambhava, otherwise it can't be to the minutest description of the guests mentioned in the Kumara Sambhava. Only those are featured in the paintings. And the next painting that you see here, it's Shiva. You see the beautiful bridegroom on the big day, the D-Day of his life. Except that there are not many people are allowed to see this because of the rules. And also, even if you go in, often people miss this out because the paintings are not so prominent. But now I think, since I've told you, if at all you get an opportunity to go there, and if we are able to get permission to go to the lower part, we can try to observe closely. And the paintings are done in some order, not necessarily in the order of the sequence of the marriage rituals, but in a different order. We don't know why. The marriage scene comes before the proposal scene. So anyway, it's a beautiful, rare painting of Shiva's marriage as described in Kumara Sambhava.
I think with that
I've exhausted my list of favorite paintings.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. I think before we, if you have questions, please, you can keep it in, you could start typing it in. I just wanted to ask you about 2 questions that come up frequently members of Intach, there are a couple of questions that come up, and I just wanted to ask your views on that. One is we mentioned about the Panchavarnas and the sort of old canonic principles that guide the creation of these paintings. But we see a lot of innovations also. And like with any art form, there is this constant tension between the need to stay unchanged and this need to stay and need to innovate. So I recall this fantastic panel that the artist P.K. Sadanandan had done at the Biennale, which was the Parivetta Pandirugulam legend, where he had drawn upon the idiom of the Kerala murals, but then he had freely innovated. So how do you view
And I
that?
see a lot of blue here.
There is a lot of blue, and he actually imported lapis lazuli. And there is a wonderful video of the production of this mural. Fantastic achievement, this painting. So how do you look at this sort of tension between integrity and innovation?
I would put it this way, what you say is true. All art forms have to change. We are at a very crucial stage of human civilization. Technology is taking over and new developments are coming in. And I don't see it as a conflict at all. But one thing, we will have to draw a line and make a compromise, as we do in all aspects of life. As per international norms and guidelines of heritage preservation being followed all over the world, and India is an active participant in many of these international forums, to preserve heritage structures, sites, archaeological monuments and temples. Within these heritage structures, one must follow the traditional methods and would not and should not dilute the same. Within the Peruvanam temple or Tiruvanchikulam or Mattancherry, all conservation efforts to preserve these paintings, or if there is any problem with the paintings, the way to restore them has to be as per the highest standards of international preservation norms, and which means you have to use minimum intervention, not to use modern materials, and if at all you are compelled to use anything on them, it has to be the original one or as close to the original as is possible. So if we are not doing it, the whole monument will lose its heritage character, and UNESCO will on no day recognize them as World Heritage. And even if they have recognized them, they will issue a warning that they may de-recognize it. In some monuments all over the world, authorities got a warning letter and then they quickly mended their ways. So these monuments, though they have not been officially declared World Heritage, they are definitely World Heritage. So we have to preserve that character. But outside these monuments, if you're building a new house, a palace, or even this show that was done, definitely you can innovate. You can do Kerala style, but you can bring in new colors because it's your house, your new house. Or if you're building even a public building, or even for a lobby of a 5-star hotel, if the hotel authorities want certain innovations, why not? It's Kerala style with some innovations. It's a new hotel. It's not a heritage structure, though it may have heritage elements in it. So I don't see any conflict as long as we are able to strictly adhere to the principle that heritage should be left untouched, but we can innovate as far as Kerala murals is concerned outside the heritage structures.
So in a sacred space, you would probably stay true to the original principles, but in a place where those sort of mandates do not apply, you can go further away.
Yeah, no, I would put it not necessarily sacred. Mattancherry is a secular building. So when I say heritage, it includes sacred and secular. I would put it that way. And even in a temple, if you're building a new temple, you have to follow the agamic principles and all other religious guidelines. But if you want to do a Kerala style painting and want to put a new color, I don't think even ICOMOS or any other world organization will not object to it at all, because it's a new temple. You can do it the way you want. It's the 21st century innovation that you are doing on it. So it's not so much the question of the sacred and the secular, it's more to do with heritage and non-heritage. You should not spoil heritage or make heritage a non-heritage item, but in a new building, new hotel, new factory, or even a new temple, if the temple authorities and the local people want, you can innovate, again subject to the general norms of temple building.
So while you deal with that phone call, I'll just step in for a second to say, to tell people.
No, I've disconnected it. It would actually, I put my mobile on the silent mode, but these people, they are after me. They started calling on the landline. But I've now disconnected the landline. They can't call for the next few minutes.
Okay. So we'll let you go quite soon. On that topic, I do remember you saying that even in the older paintings, there were artists who did very sort of innovative, surprising sort of interventions. Even in the older paintings. You had a few examples of how even in sort of sacred spaces, they were unexpected, sometimes slightly quirky paintings. Would you like to talk about a couple of those examples? This was one that you had talked about, the cat painting.
But again, it is from Pallimanna. Some of my favorite ones are from Pallimanna, and even in the book, some of the paintings which have been featured on the cover, back cover, front cover are all from Pallimanna because they are so beautiful. Pallimanna is one of my favorite sites. It's far from the highway. Many people have not visited it, so maybe the paintings are still retaining their pristine glory with not many visitors and with all the solitude that they deserve. And this painting, it is definitely, the artist has taken some liberty, and I would say the scriptures and the painting styles do allow a certain amount of liberty for the artist, and within that they do it. Here he has adhered to the Panchavarna, the technique, everything is as per Kerala style. It's a typical Kerala style painting. And you have the baby Krishna, again painted beautifully, the nude Krishna with all his ornaments. And then you have Yashoda on one side with a huge ball. Krishna normally, even as a baby, he's shown with his lump of butter or butter ball. But here he is not shown with that, but instead the mother is holding the butter ball, his favorite, offering it to him. And the artist has put a cat. And the cat, even in the US, when this painting was being discussed, a professor quite well versed in Indian art, he pointed out cat is quite rare in Indian art, especially religious art. Cat is very rare. And how come a cat comes here? What's its role? And although it's rare, it's not taboo. Even in Mahabalipuram, even in the Ganga's descent panel, you have more than one cat, and one cat there is trying to imitate the sage by trying to do penance, and they say it's a divine cat. So here the cat, I would say we have to interpret the significance. The cat is its role can be identified in the context of the cat is eyeing the butter ball with longing eyes. And so the cat is looking at the butter, but naturally the mother is reserving the butter for her baby.
I think we'll take some questions now because we've reached the 2-hour point. I think we'll take a hard stop in a bit. So there's a whole lot of questions. There are paeans of praise to your scholarship. But there are some questions. So there is a number of requests to do more sessions where we focus on individual subjects within the wider ground we covered today. So the one question about blue that from Mr. Jayakrishnan Menon is maybe those days the extraction of blue dye from indigo plant was not developed as one of his hypotheses for the absence of blue. Do you want to respond to that?
No, I would agree to it. I'm not too sure, so I think I would agree to it. So anyway, they didn't use it. That is for sure. But why they didn't use it? This could be one of the reasons, definitely.
Another observation from Meera Gopinath. She says Apasmara, though not a god, is depicted is green in color.
I do agree. I've myself seen Apasmara in many Nataraja panels in the temples I studied in green. And as I did tell you, there are a lot of exceptions. Even Ravana is depicted in green, even in Mattancherry. But Putana breastfeeding Krishna, that's a subtle example. Krishna is shown in green and Putana in a shade of black. But from a distance, both look green. And in some books, it's described both as green. But definitely in Pallimanna, Putana is depicted black. So these color schemes are broadly done, but there are a lot of exceptions. Even in the earlier days, one wouldn't know why it took place, but there are exceptions. I do agree with what she says.
Jay Gani, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. The question is, can you please talk a little bit more about Agora Shiva, the conception?
Yeah. Now there are multiple. I'm afraid whether I'll be able to do justice within this short time. Agora Shiva. It basically, as the name indicates, it's that form of Shiva where he's in a very fierce or angry Raudra mood. And why he is in that mood, there are multiple theories. Again, scholars are hotly debating. All the theories may be equally holding good. And in one stage, they say when after the death of his first wife, Sati, before he marries Parvati, it is that stage of his life when he's Agora Shiva. But there's another school of thought which does not agree to this. And in art, he's very rarely depicted. And only in Kerala, I see him with 8 hands. And of course, being Agora form, he is shown in a very angry mood with war weapons holding it. And he is in the process of fighting or annihilating his enemies. I've tried to be very brief and sort of just touching on the surface, but it's a long story, I would say, with multiple arguments and counter arguments.
It's a form that you find more frequently in Eastern India, isn't it, in art?
You find it all over, but not very common.
Very common.
You find it even in Tamil Nadu, even in other places, definitely in Western India, North India, but it's not a very common form of Shiva. Because even losing his first wife, Sati, that story is known, but not very commonly known. We all know right from childhood only Shiva and Parvati. That whole other theories, many don't even take it seriously, but there is a line of thought. Even in coming to Kerala, in Chemmantitta, Mahadeva, he's supposed to be in Raudra form. And they say that's because that god in that temple, there are multiple theories to it. One is he's in that stage of life when he has lost Sati and is yet to marry Parvati. And Pallimanna, he has already married Parvati, and so he's in a very jolly or benign mood. So Pallimanna, they even say the Pallimanna god is a benign god and very compassionate and very happy. But in Chemmantitta, he's very ferocious, and this is the reason given by the priests and local scholars.
The other question is, I'm not sure which painting she's referencing, but the question from Padma Chandran is, I see a small figure near Shiva's ear in the Shiva painting in Mattancherry Palace. Can you tell me who that is?
I think she's referring to the marriage painting, because I've not shown any other Shiva painting from Mattancherry. And in that it is really confusing, because Vishnu is clear. He is giving away, is a prominent figure giving away Parvati in marriage to Shiva. Shiva is seen, and the figure in between them we take to be Himavan. And there are quite a few figures around them, which are the guests, which we are not able to say for certain who each of them are. Only the 3 figures I can say for certain. Vishnu, rather four: Vishnu, Parvati, Shiva, and Himavan. All others are guests. We have to make interpretations because we know Vishnu came, sorry, Lakshmi came, Brahma came, Saraswati came, but then the figures, the full figure is not there. If you have a multi-headed figure, you can boldly say it's Brahma, but we don't have it here. And if there's a swan or a bird above, below a goddess, it's Saraswati. We have it in another panel on the same room, but not here. So I'm not willing to make a guess.
Another question, I think you, Sir Saravanan asked, sir, any plans of doing a mural tour? It would be very interesting.
We have been doing multiple tours of different such themes under Intach Tamil Nadu chapter and other Intach chapters. Even the Coimbatore chapter initiated some tours by me in their area, and we have been, Tamil Nadu and Kerala are close, friendly neighbors sharing the same culture and same heritage. We have been coming to Tamil Nadu often for the Roman Trail tour and other tours. But coming to the Kerala mural, after my research, in fact, I should thank you, Mr. Arun Narayanan, and the Intach Palakkad chapter. This is the first time I'm doing a presentation based on my research on Kerala mural in India. I've done it in University of Cambridge in UK, in the Winchester University in Springfield in Ohio, and in Canada, but not in India. And we were thinking, some Intach members from Chennai were planning a tour. Even when I was doing the research, they told I must take off 2 days from ASI and show them around, but that tour never materialized. And after that, no one requested, we didn't take it seriously, though the book has sold very well. We are left with very few copies and it's not available at all. So it has done very well, and definitely Intach has the expertise and the experience, and we can do a painting tour of all these places, adhering to all the temple regulations, the timings, dress code, everything. And we will cover these places and a few more and do it as an exclusive painting tour. And Intach and with all our travel agent friends can do a fine job of it. Only thing, as you all know, we have to wait for it.
The vaccine.
Yeah, for all that. Maybe as in Intach, every time they say, when I say we'll do travel, they say we all have to be vaccinated. So let's pray the vaccine comes soon.
But thanks to the virus, we are able to have sessions of this nature, which wouldn't have taken place otherwise. So there is a good side to it also. We also conduct tours, and we have been to temples with very fine murals, but we have never had an expert of your order. So once things clear up, we definitely are going to pull you in and have a session.
So we can do any number of sessions of these, maybe even specialized sessions.
We will do that and the tour as soon as we can. I just want to finally, before we close, there is a topic that that sort of made us want to do this. Many houses, especially of the old nobility, they have smaller panels of Kerala murals within their ancestral homes. Many temples do, and as I don't need to tell you, we have Intach has the probably the best capability to restore murals. We have a set of, I think, 7 labs across the country, which is I think the widest set of labs. So we sometimes people know about it and they reach out to the local chapter, and we go and they ask us what they need to do with an old mural. But usually those conversations follow a typical trajectory. So they ask us, they take our guidance, then we put them in touch with the lab, and we draw out the process, which is that somebody from the lab will come and do a condition report, and then there would be a restoration process and so on. And very often we offer them very attractive sort of fee models also, where it's very affordable because we want to see these things. But what usually happens, almost always happens, is that very soon they call in a young artist who's trained in one of the mural art schools, and they come in and they overpaint on these ancient murals. And it leaves them very pleased because the outcome is very fresh and bright and new. Now, what are your views on that practice? How?
What you say is very true, but I would add it's true not only for Kerala murals, but other types of murals, not only in Kerala, all over India and even outside. Now, legally, we can't do much about it. Because it's in a private property, and if the owner of that painting or that house wants it that way, we can't prevent it legally. It's not in a public temple or whatever, or Matancheri, or not. It's not in a defined protected heritage property. But then what we can do is we can appeal or sensitize the owner that he is possessing a piece of heritage, and if he's doing it that way of repainting it totally by a modern artist, the heritage value is gone. Yeah, economically or financially and otherwise, having a heritage property is more worthwhile than doing something modern which may look good or bright but has completely lost its heritage value. And once it has lost it, it's irretrievable. You can't bring it back or do a reverse process. So we can sensitize him on that and leave it at that. That's what Intach can do through its various awareness programs and such things. But if he's still adamant and wanting to do it, even in Chennai, we have had Tanjavur, many places, of a person having a heritage house but wanting to put Spartak tiles and glaze tiles in the bathroom. Legally, we can't do anything, but he's spoiling his own heritage. So I would put it that way, but definitely this will not take place and should not be allowed to take place within a heritage building, and it doesn't take place. But in homes, other places, we can impress on him that freelance restorers, government archaeology department can help, but they are already, hard pressed with their own work. Of course, Intach labs are the best bet. Intach people are most willing to give whatever help such people need. Either we give them technical advice and move away. It's up to them to implement it with their own people. If they want Intach itself to do the restoration, Intach is happy to do it. So Intach can intervene to the extent the owners want. And whatever way they do it, with Intach or without Intach, we don't mind, as long as they are able to retain the precious heritage which they have inherited.
So at this point, I'd just like to, I'm sure we'll get to a point where we can do a case study where I am right now. There was a small kingdom of which my village was part, and it has a palace which today is a hotel. It's called the Kollangoat Palace, and an intact and it has very fine murals, and it has friezes and a number of very beautiful works of art, including some Ravi Verma originals. And the Intach labs have been working on I think, couple of year-long project to restore them. And at some point, we look forward to the privilege of showcasing their work to the world. But as you said, the showing is believing. So, I mean, showing is convincing. So we hope to do that. But on that note, that there are these facilities, and as Dr. Suresh rightly said, these are works done by some unknown master. Going back to the title of the talk, it's an unknown master. In the Kerala murals, we don't have a practice of an artist signing his work. So an unknown master from a very long back produced a piece of work, and when you overpaint it, you lose connection with that artist, everything that was going through his mind, his patron who commissioned the work. So and just to get a brighter picture, it's too great a loss. So if you are custodian, or in some manner, if you can influence a decision about an old painting, before you sort of succumb to the temptation of getting it overpainted, please do get a comprehensive sort of review. We are always happy and available. Intach chapters are there across the state. In Palakkad, we are available, but across the state, we're there. Reach out to the chapter, and we would be happy to come and give you an evaluation. But for now, I think we have already overdrawn on Dr. Suresh's generosity and also your time on a weekend. So thank you so much, Dr. Suresh. This was wonderful. There are so many messages from people that we should be doing more sessions with you, and we will indeed do that. Thank you so much for your time. And to everybody who's logged in, it's wonderful for you to come join in for this session. And we hope that it has kindled your interest to look up these subjects more. Do let us know what you think. If there are other things that you're interested in, we'd be happy to organize more sessions. But for now, good night. And tomorrow is Tiruvonam. To all the Malayalis and the non-Malayalis, Tiruvonam greetings to you in advance. Have a wonderful Onam and have a wonderful week ahead. Thank you so much, and good night.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you found it useful. Thank you. Thank you.
It was wonderfully useful. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.